The courthouse bell rang 3 times, and every whisper in Dry Hollow turned toward Ethan Mercer. He stood near the back wall with dust on his coat and his father's brass survey compass in his hand. 3 years had passed since he had last walked into that Wyoming town. 3 years since men called him a cheat. 3 years since a wrong line on a railroad map had cost families their claims, their savings, and their good names. Now the town wanted him back. Not because they trusted him. Because the land was in trouble again. The courthouse smelled of lamp oil, old wood, and damp wool. Ranchers crowded one side. Shopkeepers filled the other. A railroad agent sat near the judge's desk with a flat black hat on his knee. At the front, Horace Blackwell smiled like a man who already owned the room. Blackwell was the town's founder, richest landholder, and the kind of man folks praised when they were afraid not to. Ethan stepped forward when Judge Marlowe called his name. "Mr. Mercer," the judge said, "you have been hired to resurvey the eastern boundary before the railroad extension begins." A low murmur rolled through the room. Someone near the door muttered, "Same man who ruined the Whitmore claim." Ethan kept his face still, but the words struck deep. His hand tightened around the compass. It had belonged to his father, a careful man who taught him that land lines were promises. Ethan had lived by that. Still, one bad map had marked him forever. Then a woman rose from the second row. Clara Whitmore. Ethan knew her before anyone said her name. She was not the girl he remembered from years ago, standing beside her father outside the schoolhouse. She was a grown woman now, straight-backed and pale with anger. Her brown hair was pinned neat beneath a plain bonnet. Her dress was simple, but her eyes were sharp enough to cut through every lie in the room. "My father trusted a surveyor once," Clara said. "That trust cost him his land, his health, and his peace." The courthouse fell silent. Ethan looked at her. "Miss Whitmore, I did not draw the final map that took your father's claim." "But your name was on the survey notes," she answered. "And your work gave Blackwell's men the chance to call my father a squatter." Blackwell sighed softly, as if the pain of others tired him. "Miss Whitmore," he said, "old grief should not stop progress. The railroad will bring prosperity." Clara did not look at him. Her eyes stayed on Ethan. "Progress for whom?" A few people shifted in their seats. Nobody answered. Ethan felt the old shame rise hot under his collar. He had come back to clear his name, not to stand accused by the one woman whose anger he understood most. Her father had died with the town laughing at him. Ethan had carried that knowledge like a stone in his chest. Judge Marlowe struck his gavel. "Enough. Mr. Mercer will begin at first light. The town needs facts, not old quarrels." Clara sat, but her look followed Ethan like a brand. Outside, wind pushed dust along the main street. Wagon wheels creaked near the general store. A horse stamped beside the hitching rail. Ethan walked down the courthouse steps, wanting only air. Clara followed him. "Mr. Mercer." He stopped. She stood a few feet away, hands clasped tight before her. In the sunlight, he saw the strain around her eyes. She looked like a woman who had learned to stay calm because breaking would please too many people. "I will be present when you survey," she said. "That is rough ground." "I did not ask if it was pleasant." "No," Ethan said quietly. "I suppose you did not." Her chin lifted. "If another line is drawn against my family, I will see it happen with my own eyes." Ethan looked down at the compass in his palm. "Then come, but if the truth is not what either of us wants, we both still have to face it." For one breath her anger wavered, not gone, just touched by something like fear. Then Blackwell appeared at the courthouse door. "Miss Whitmore," he called smoothly, "you should not trouble yourself with men's work. Your schoolchildren need you more than these dusty old claims." Clara's cheeks flushed. Ethan turned toward Blackwell. A boundary line belongs to every person it touches. Blackwell's smile thinned. Careful, Mercer. You were invited back to measure land, not stir up ghosts. Ethan met his eyes. Sometimes ghosts are standing on marked property. The words landed hard. Blackwell's jaw tightened before he covered it with a laugh. That was the first thing Ethan noticed. The second came before dusk. He rode east alone to inspect the first marker before the official survey began. The prairie rolled gold under a wide sky. Dry grass scratched against his boots as he walked the old line, checking distances by chain and compass. Far off, the unfinished railroad grade cut across the land like a scar. By the time he reached Cottonwood Draw, the light had turned red. There, half buried beneath weeds and cracked mud, stood a stone marker. Ethan knelt. His heart slowed. The mark carved into the stone was old, older than Blackwell's town map, older than the railroad claim. He brushed dirt away with his thumb and found 3 letters cut deep into the face. WMC. Whitmore Mercer County Survey. His father's mark. Ethan stared toward Dry Hollow, where courthouse lamps were beginning to glow. This marker should not have been here. And if it was real, then Clara Whitmore's father had never been wrong at all. By sunrise, Clara Whitmore stood beside Ethan Mercer on the edge of Cottonwood Draw, staring at the stone that could change everything. She had come with a school satchel over one arm, expecting tricks, excuses, and polished lies. Instead, she found Ethan kneeling in the dry grass, brushing dirt from a marker carved with his father's survey mark. Her voice came low. Why did no one ever speak of this? Ethan did not answer at once. He set his brass compass on the stone and watched the needle settle. Because someone needed it forgotten. Clara's face tightened. Do not make this sound simple. My father died being called a thief. I know. No, Mr. Mercer. You know shame. You do not know what it is to hear children repeat their parents, gossip outside your own schoolhouse. That struck him harder than anger would have. A wagon rattled in the distance. Ethan rose, looking toward the unfinished railroad grade. Then help me prove it, he said. Clara searched his face. She wanted to hate him. It had been easier that way. But the man before her looked less like an enemy and more like someone who had been buried under the same lie. Together, they followed the old line across the prairie. Ethan measured distance by chain, marking each turn in a small notebook. Clara carried the chain's end through dry grass and thorn bush without complaint. Dusk gathered on the hem of her dress. Sunlight burned across the open land. At noon, they stopped beneath a leaning telegraph pole near the abandoned railroad camp. Clara opened her satchel and took out bread wrapped in cloth. My father kept papers, she said. Not legal ones, just notes, dates, names, things he thought mattered. Ethan accepted the bread carefully. Did he ever mention my father? He called him an honest man. Ethan looked away. Clara's voice softened despite herself. That hurts you. My father died believing I had stained his name. For the first time, silence between them was not sharp. It was heavy, shared, and almost kind. Then Ethan saw something under the old railroad office porch. A plank had been nailed newer than the rest. He crossed to it and pried it up with his knife. Beneath lay a rusted tin tube used for field maps. Clara's breath caught as he opened it. Inside was a torn survey sheet. Not a letter, not a confession, a working map. Ethan spread it across the porch. The faded lines showed Dry Hollow before Blackwell's grand town plan. Clara leaned close, her shoulder almost touching his. There, she whispered, that is my father's claim. Ethan pointed to another line, and here is where the later map shifted it. Who could do that? Someone with access before the county filing. Clara's eyes moved to a faint pencil mark in the corner. HB. Horace Blackwell. Her hand covered her mouth. My father must have seen this. Maybe he did, Ethan said. Maybe he kept quiet because he did not understand what it meant. Clara shook her head, tears bright but unshed. No, he would have fought. Unless someone made him believe fighting would cost you the school. That fear settled over her like cold rain. Late afternoon clouds gathered above the prairie. Ethan and Clara rode back toward town with the map hidden under Clara's schoolbooks. Halfway home, Deputy Samuel Reed met them near the blacksmith shop. He looked around before speaking. Blackwell is asking who rode east this morning. Ethan's jaw tightened. Did you tell him? Samuel gave a dry smile. I told him I had better things to do than count horses. Clara stepped closer. Deputy, do you remember my father's case? I remember men laughing too loud when the court ruled against him, Samuel said. And I remember Blackwell buying that land 3 days later. Ethan unfolded just enough of the map for him to see the altered boundary. Samuel's face changed. Where did you get this? Old rail camp, Ethan said. Samuel looked toward the courthouse. Then you need more than this. Blackwell will call it damaged, unofficial, and useless. Clara's shoulders sank. Ethan studied the map again. There may be one place the original line still proves itself. Where? Clara asked. Ethan pointed past town, toward the canyon where the old rail bridge stood against the darkening sky. The final marker. If it is still there, the whole town map is wrong. Clara looked toward the bridge, fear and hope fighting in her eyes. Before they could move, church bells rang hard from the square. A boy ran down the street shouting, "Schoolhouse is locked. Blackwell says Miss Whitmore is dismissed until the land matter is settled." Clara went still. Ethan saw the blow land. Her work, her children, her last good name in town, all taken with one sentence. He stepped beside her, not in front of her. Clara, he said, we can stop now, or we can finish what your father started. She wiped one tear with the heel of her hand and lifted her chin. Then we finish it. Wait, before we move on, what do you think about the story so far? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I'm really curious to know. That night under storm clouds and lantern light, Ethan opened the torn map again. A hidden lower fold slipped loose. On it was a boundary mark drawn beside the abandoned rail bridge, with one chilling note in old pencil. Remove before filing. The abandoned rail bridge groaned in the night wind as Ethan and Clara climbed toward it with one lantern between them. Below, the canyon lay black and deep. Above, storm clouds rolled over Dry Hollow like a warning. The old bridge had not carried a train in years, but its iron ribs still stretched across the gorge, rusted and stubborn. Clara held the torn survey map against her chest. Remove before filing, she whispered. Those words ruined my father. Ethan lifted his lantern toward the far ridge. Then tonight we put them back where they belong. They crossed slowly. Loose boards bent beneath their boots. Wind snapped Clara's skirt against her legs. Ethan walked close, not touching her, but near enough that she felt his steady presence. Halfway across, voices rose from the far side. Horace Blackwell stepped from the dark with 2 men behind him. I warned you, Mercer, Blackwell said. Ghosts are dangerous things to wake. Clara's fingers tightened around the map. Ethan moved beside her. You changed the boundary before filing. You took Whitmore land, sold it to the railroad, and let Clara's father die in disgrace. Blackwell's smile vanished. A town needs men willing to make hard choices. My father was ruined, Clara said. Your father was weak, Blackwell snapped. He found the first error, then lost his nerve when I reminded him your little school could disappear. Clara flinched, but she did not step back. Deputy Samuel Reed's voice came from behind Blackwell. That is enough. Samuel emerged with Judge Marlowe, the railroad agent, and half a dozen townspeople carrying lanterns. Ethan had sent for them before leaving town. Blackwell turned pale. Ethan raised the lantern and found the canyon marker beneath a tangle of weeds near the bridge footing. He scraped dirt away until the old carving showed clear. WMC. Then he placed his father's brass compass on the stone. The needle matched the original line on the torn map. Judge Marlowe bent down, his face hardening. The filed town map is false. The railroad agent stared at Blackwell. Then our purchase was made on stolen land. Blackwell tried to run, but Samuel caught his arm and locked iron cuffs around his wrists. At dawn, Dry Hollow gathered at the courthouse. This time, Clara stood at the front, not as a disgraced schoolteacher but as her father's daughter. The judge restored the Whitmore claim. Blackwell's holdings were frozen. Ethan's name was cleared in the county record. When the schoolhouse door opened again, the children ran to Clara, and she had to turn away for one quiet second so no one saw her cry. Ethan waited by the road, compass in hand. Clara walked to him. "I thought you were part of the lie." "I thought truth was enough by itself," he said. "It is not. Someone has to be brave enough to stand beside it." She smiled through tired tears. "Then stand beside me." Weeks later, at sunrise, Ethan and Clara placed a new stone boundary marker on the grassy ridge outside town. Clara pressed her hand into the wet mortar. Ethan set his father's brass survey compass into a small glass case at the base. Dry Hollow's first honest line gleamed in the morning light. And for the first time, both their names pointed home.